tiny history on the ISI, very much required. I would also love for you to begin this chapter by giving the Pakistani perspective on what the ISI is.
The Pakistani perspective on the ISI is that it is their intelligence establishment, their spy agency. Every nation has a spy agency of some kind. It's, intelligence is a good thing. You want to collect information about what's out there in the world. That's called domain awareness, situational awareness. It's important for every nation to have that. And there are various ways of doing it. Your diplomats also collect intelligence in a very transparent way. So that's one way of doing it. Another way is to do it through clandestine means by doing it through means that are not entirely legal, etc. That's what intelligence agencies typically do. And the Inter-Services Intelligence, the ISI, is Pakistan's intelligence branch. Now, so that is the Pakistani perspective. It is one of their lines of defense. It is what enables the nation to know about what's happening outside their country, especially, and from the Pakistani perspective, the only threat that they say is India, because apparently we are an existential threat for Pakistan. So the ISI essentially is focused towards India. Its objective is to collect intelligence through various ways about India, about what's happening in India and what our plans are and so on. And its other objective is to destabilize us in various ways. Now, this is my perspective. This is the Indian perspective that I'm giving you. So the ISI is an integral part of Pakistan's terrorist establishment, the terrorist factory. Pakistan has always sought strategic depth in places like Afghanistan. If you look at the map of Pakistan, it's a pretty narrow nation. It doesn't have these wide open spaces. Like India has tremendous amount of depth in its geography. Pakistan, the furthest part of Pakistan would be a couple of 100 kilometers at most from India. So Pakistan lacks the depth, and that's why they've always sought to have strategic depth in Afghanistan, which is why they created a terrorist organization called the Taliban, which then they lost control of. And in the 1990s, it's an organization that terrorized Afghanistan, blew up the Bamiyan Buddhas, put women in horrible conditions, and did all those things. But today, the Taliban is an entirely separate entity. That ISI has lost control of them. So Pakistan has always sought to play this game of using terrorism as part of state policy and to something that advances their geopolitical interests. So Afghanistan has suffered a lot from that. The Iranians, to some extent, have suffered from Pakistani terrorism. Last year, I think there were Iranian missile strikes on Pakistani infrastructure within Pakistan. And we in India have been the prime target. So the ISI is their main intelligence agency. It is also the main enabler of terrorism. Pakistan is a nation that seems to be a democracy. It seems to have a parliament and state assemblies and legislators and chief ministers and a prime minister, etc. But this is all for show. Its actual power center is the ISI military complex, the bunch of generals who are at the top of the military and the top ISI people who typically are interchangeable, you could say. It's the same entity, but it shows different faces. So there's a separate ISI and separate military, but actually it's more or less pretty much the same organization. And the terrorist infrastructure is also part of the ISI military combination, but it seems to be, it is shown as so the various terrorist organizations, they are typically depicted as charitable organizations and religious organizations that do charitable work and take care of orphans and establish madrasas or schools or whatever. So it looks like they're doing a lot of charitable work and social work, but that's a recruitment. That's a ploy for recruiting the vulnerable and the weak and the poor into their terrorist machine. And then they are sent across the border to get mowed down by Indian armed forces who are doing their job of defending the country from terrorists.
Kind of tiny context pieces that I'm going to list out. This is very human context. First human context is that the most dastardly terrorist attack that I have witnessed in my own lifetime is the 2008 Mumbai terror attack.
Yes.
I believe more than 200 people were killed.
The official figure is 166.
Okay.
But yeah, at that time it looked like thousands of people were.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this happened in the heart of Mumbai.
Oh, absolutely.
Our city.
Yes.
The one terrorist who survived the Mumbai terror attack was Ajmal Kasab.
Yes.
Ajmal Kasab was a youth from a poor family in Pakistan. He admitted to this in custody.
Yes.
I've had lots of people on the podcast who have actually met Ajmal Kasab, and everyone said that he was completely brainwashed. Mm-hmm. That is what the globe knows as the nucleus of terrorism. Mm-hmm. That is what terrorism is. You brainwash people based on religious radicalism. This is the first human context I want to give the audiences. Pakistan is a terror factory. And I think the whole globe knows this as well. But it's the Pakistani people who have fed a different kind of narrative.
Yes.
I want to speak a little bit about Pakistani people. You end up meeting them when you go to UAE, when you go to Qatar.
You meet them all over the place.
Yeah, there's pleasantries exchanged because on some level, Indian and Pakistani social ethos is very similar.
We are the same, essentially.
Yeah. Culturally, we
Apart from the
understand each other.
religious angle, we're the same.
Sense of humor matches. It's very similar culturally. So the conversation invariably goes to a point where we say that, hey, you and me want peace, but it's our governments that are at loggerheads. This is the first time in my own adult life that I'm seeing a situation where 99% of Indians don't want peace at this point. That is the truth of the times that we live in, especially after Operation Sindoor. Because we know that if we don't engage in conflict, there's going to be more terrorist attacks. That's just what pattern recognition has taught us. Context on the ISI from the India perspective. My only input here is I think that the ISI is one of the premier enemies of world peace. And the rest of the world needs to know the Indian perspective on the ISI.
Yes.
And I'm trying to be as objective and neutral here as is possible.
So the ISI, look, it needs to be exposed. The Pakistani establishment, the military ISI terrorist combination, it has historically served as a mercenary organization. It's always served a bigger master. Look, these people, they don't serve their people. Let's say you are a dictatorship and you have a fake prime minister and legislature and all that, but you are a dictatorship and you are hiding behind that. But as long as you're still serving your nation and your people, you're doing a good job. And I have no issue with dictators who serve their nations. Lee Kuan Yew was a great example. A man who brought Singapore out of a third world status into a first world status in just one generation. You could call him a dictator, a benevolent dictator, and so on. So a dictatorship I have no issue with that. But the problem is that these people, these generals and these ISI heads and bosses, they don't serve their people. They don't serve their nation. They serve whoever is giving them top dollar. That's been their track record. And they are using the Pakistani people as cannon fodder. And the Pakistani people are brainwashed through the education system and whatever other indoctrination methods they have. A lot of it involves some kind of religious thing. That's a whole different angle. So the Pakistani people are brainwashed into believing that these people are our saviors. The ISI military terrorist combination. They are our saviors who are safeguarding us from the evil neighbor next door.
Yeah, there's another objective human perspective here. Every time you go to a Gulf country and you meet a Pakistani who's working there, they all say that, hey, halat ghar par bahut kharab hai. That translates to the situation back home is terrible.
Yes.
They're talking about the financial situation.
Yes.
The military, which is actually running the country, doesn't know how to run the country. And they're running it into the ground.
And their children all live in the West. Their families live in the West. And the average Pakistani citizen doesn't have that luxury or that privilege of being able to escape the country's situation.
Yeah. The wealth disparity there is insane. That is what is causing the rich Pakistanis to settle in the UK, in Europe, in Dubai. The poor Pakistanis have to leave the country for the sake of their families to provide. And they're unhappy wherever they are. They miss being back home. And this is the outcome of letting the military run the country. Because in our country, the military does the military's job.
Absolutely.
And they do a damn good job. Doesn't matter who's in power in Pakistan.
It doesn't matter who's in power. It doesn't matter who's the prime minister. Because at the end of the day, it's the military ISI combination and the terrorist extension of theirs who are actually in power.
Yeah. Another human context here. I once met a Pakistani journalist in UAE. We were at a content creator conference together. And he had told me this. And I was much younger at the time. This was around 4 or 5 years ago. He said that, one stark difference between India and Pakistan is in your country, the military doesn't own anything. In our country, you walk around and you'll see restaurants owned by the military.
Yes.
And businesses owned by the military. No one knows this until they actually visit Pakistan. This is what the globe doesn't know. That is not how flourishing countries operate.
That's right.
The military is supposed to do the military's job. And almost any leader that we see in power in Pakistan for a sustained period of time is likely just a puppet of the military.
Well, that's typically how you fall out of power in Pakistan. Look, if you're a Pakistani politician, you have to toe the line of the ISI military terrorist entity. As long as you do that, you're allowed to amass as much wealth as you want, as long as you give a certain percentage to the bosses. But you can amass as much wealth as you want, as long as you don't try to grab too much power. You have to remember where the real power lies. That's the difference between power and wealth.
I did this one episode with Sushant Sareen, who's a geopolitical analyst, studied Pakistan his whole life. What he basically said is that the people in power are in charge of policies, but if any of the policies are not in accordance with what the army wants, that's when you're in trouble.
Yeah, so you're given a warning, I suppose, and you can rectify the errors. But if you persist in having policies that go against what the army ISI entity wants, then you are in trouble. And yeah.
I wonder how this kind of content doesn't reach educated Pakistanis. Or it does and they just choose to look past it.
I suppose they choose to look past it, I suppose.